Welcome to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we're going to be talking about Peabody, coal, and St. Louis. But before we get into our discussion, let's take a look at a movie made about some action in St. Louis in January of 2013.
We've come here today in the cold, in the face of overwhelming odds, in a country where big business controls almost every aspect of our everyday lives, to shine a light on the evil, vile company known as Peabody Coal.
The evilness that they brought among my people is unacceptable. And as we bring the words of the elderly from Black Mesa and Big Mountain, where they're being forced to relocate, forced relocation, thousands of our people are forced to leave their land to make room for Peabody's coal mine, the destructive mine, making this the biggest forced relocation of the native people in this country since the Trail of Tears. Peabody, do not expand your coal mine. We want you to leave. Cease operations now.
Peabody Coal displaces communities, poisons the environment and the people, and leaves a path of destruction and misery wherever they set up shop.
Yes, they do.
They have taken too much from the people of Black Mesa, from the Navajo Nation, and from the people of Appalachia.
Yeah!
Yes! We start taking it back! And we are taking back what they have stolen from us for years. Our culture, our heritage, our dignity. Today, East and West meet in St. Louis with all of you today, and I say to you, we will suffer no more by their hand.
The criminals are inside! The criminals are inside! The criminals are inside! The criminals are inside! The criminals are inside!
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. We just saw a movie about some action in St. Louis in January of 2013, organized by MORE, Missourians Organizing for Reform and Empowerment. For the discussion this evening, I have a couple of guests who put a lot of time and energy into thinking about coal. I have Sara Edgar with the Beyond Coal campaign. Sara, who does the Beyond Coal campaign?
Well, thanks for having me. Sierra Club is the Beyond Coal campaign. Sierra Club is the oldest and largest grassroots environmental organization in the country.
Over 20 years old?
Well over 20. We were actually founded in 1892 by John Muir. And the Beyond Coal campaign is pretty young. It was founded, I think, right about 6 years ago. And it was first initially a response to all of these coal plants that were being proposed all across the country. And so they were, the Sierra Club felt that it was necessary to try to stop these proposals and move towards clean energy instead and reducing consumption rather than building new coal plants because of the impacts on public health and the impacts on the environment. And now the campaign is really focusing on stopping and retiring the oldest coal plants in our country, the ones that are really, really dirty and polluting, and moving towards clean energy. So to date, they've actually retired 144 coal plants nationally, and they stopped, I believe, 172 coal plants from being built.
Stopped 172 from being built. So that really is reducing a lot of the CO2 emissions that would be going into the atmosphere and would be both polluting for people's health and be extremely damaging for the worst form of greenhouse gas, which would be hastening climate change.
Right, yes. Coal is the #1 contributor to climate change.
Okay, and with me I also have Henry Robertson, who is with Great Rivers Environmental Law. Do I have that right?
Great Rivers Environmental Law Center, yes.
Okay, now, and what sort of work does Great Rivers do?
Well, we're a nonprofit pro-environmental law firm, and I do the energy work there, so I spend my time trying to get our electric utilities to do more energy efficiency programs and renewable energy, so they can burn less coal, as Sara said.
Okay. Now tell me, in the movie that we saw, do you know what was happening generally in January of 2013?
Yeah, I was at that demonstration. It took place just outside Peabody Coal headquarters in downtown St. Louis. And the people you saw speaking were protesting what coal mining is doing in their communities, like in the Navajo Nation and West Virginia.
Well, could y'all tell me something about the relationship of St. Louis with coal?
Well, yeah, St. Louis is home to a number of the coal companies, and Peabody being the largest in the world. But we also get a lot of our energy and our electricity from coal. So Ameren, which is our local utility here in St. Louis, gets upwards of 85% of its electricity from coal-fired power. And Missouri overall gets closer to about 80%, whereas the national average at this point has dipped down to less than 37%. So we're actually getting about double our electricity from coal than the rest of the country.
I did not know that St. Louis was so out of whack with the rest of the United States and getting so much coal. So when people want to get cool on a summer day and flip on their air conditioner and then leave the house and the air conditioner's still going while nobody's in the house, what's probably the source of that cooling down the house?
Yeah, the overwhelming majority is going to be coming from coal. And that's our concern, is that at this point we should really be reducing how much coal we're burning for our electricity. There's so many other sources, and the rest of the country is moving towards wind and solar and energy efficiency measures. And here in St. Louis, we just keep chugging away with the coal.
So Missouri, St. Louis and Missouri really are different from the rest of the country in terms of how much coal that we use.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean the rest of the country is really moving very quickly away from coal, and wind is coming online all across the country, and especially in the other Plains state and Midwest, wind is becoming more and more popular, and some states are getting upwards of 20% of their electricity from wind, whereas here in Missouri we're getting less than 1% of our electricity from wind.
Again, that's really out of whack. Okay, well, tell me this. We usually don't see coal plants, so where are these coal plants? I drive around St. Louis all the time.
Yeah, I can tell you. I mean, in the early days they would build the power plants right downtown, so everybody knew where they were, everybody saw them. Now they kind of put them out in the country, out of sight, out of mind. And Ameren has 4 big coal-burning power plants in the St. Louis area. There's one in St. Charles County, which is called Sioux. There's one in South St. Louis County, which is Merrimack. That's the oldest. It dates all the way back to 1953, so it's well past its sell-by date. There's a Hlavaty plant in Franklin County, which is one of the largest in the country, and the Rush Island plant in Jefferson County. So we're ringed by these coal-fired power plants.
And so there's a good photo. Is that of the Rush Island coal plant?
Right, that's the Rush Island coal plant, which is down near Festus in Jefferson County, and that plant is actually in the midst of litigation with the EPA because of its issues with air pollution. So it is a major problem for that community. It's causing a lot of unnecessary air pollution that's harming public health, and unfortunately it's not the only one. So as Henry mentioned, there's
this is the Rush Island one you're
right.
mentioning? Okay.
Right.
Now that's one of the 4. The other 3, are the residents pretty happy with those coal plants? Is it just environmentalists who are complaining about them?
No, I actually work with residents around the Hlavaty plant, the Rush Island plant, and the Merrimack plant. And
Hlavaty is in Jefferson County?
That one's in Franklin County.
Franklin County, okay. And what do people there think about it?
Well, there's a community group called Hlavaty Environmental Organization that's been working for over 3 years now, trying to stop a proposed landfill in their community that would be built in the floodplains, be upwards of 400 acres, I mean massive. And it would be right along the floodplains of the Missouri River. high hazard for groundwater contamination.
So what a floodplain would mean, it's right by where the river is, and when the river overflows from a flood, that means a lot of the coal ash would wash down the river. Is that correct?
Well, not necessarily, but it's a huge risk. You know, these coal ash waste ponds and landfills oftentimes, you know, are not structurally sound, or they don't have, sometimes they don't have liners, sometimes they do, but the liner isn't a guarantee that there won't be contamination at the site. So it can leach into the groundwater.
But it's already burned. Hasn't all the bad stuff been burned out of it? I mean, if you drink water that has a lot of coal ash in it, isn't that just, it might taste a little gritty, but is there any problem with it?
There's a lot of problems with it. They say that if you're drinking coal ash contaminated water, it's actually worse than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. It contains mercury, lead, arsenic, all sorts of nasty, toxic heavy metals.
Okay, we're going to take a look at another movie, and then we're going to get back to our discussion of the issue of Peabody coal in St. Louis.
They've sent us two of our younger folks to be here with you, and thank you for inviting us to stay to St. Louis to be a part of this meeting with trying to meet with Greg Boyce. The other day we put a call out to his office up here in the Peabody Energy Company. We didn't get to talk with him at all. What a sad story, because, you know, he treats us like a worm, you know, trying to crawl maybe in the crevices of the building, because he sent his security to call us back. And the security said he can't meet with you, he's too busy. Can you meet with me? We said, what? We're here on behalf of the elders from Black Mesa to come deliver a letter to you. And they're like, have no respect for our elders back home. They have no respect for anybody. They have no respect for a worm, you know. So we attempted again to call them, and got the runaround, as they do all the time, giving runarounds to my family, my neighbors, my relatives who have black lung on Black Mesa. They give them a runaround to travel 300 to 500 miles to get a diagnosis. And then as they rebuke them and say, no, it's not black lung, it's not a disease from a coal company, but you have something else. And I don't know where you got it. This is what the big people upstairs are saying to my people who are dying from these respiratory diseases. Every day we bury one of our family members as they get sick. And this evil company will not admit that their smog, their coal fires on Black Mesa, that they refuse to extinguish, the fires that burn 24/7, emitting carbon dioxide and other poisonous gas, and polluting our lands and our air and our water. They even wasted billions of acre feet of the precious Ice Age old pristine Navajo aquifer, who they flushed away from the people, and the people don't have water. They haul water and be in line every day 2 to 3 hours from a tap that they supposedly provided for us, but they have dried up our wells, our natural springs, our crystal clear springs where the Hopis did their offerings and the Navajos would drink freely and the wild animals would come and quench their thirst. And this is how they are. The evilness that they brought among my people is unacceptable. And as we bring the words of the elderly from Black Mesa and Big Mountain, where they're being forced to relocate, forced relocation, tomorrow, the next day, we are coming your way to bulldoze over your home if you do not move. Your own nation, the Navajo Nation, will work on you. We will stand behind the scenes, and what they're saying at you is, we're gonna laugh at you as your property falls over and your hogan and your corral and your horses all be destructed because you are resisting. And these people are resisting, and they say, I have no place to go. This is my home. This is my life. This is where I was born. But, you know, this evil company only comes to destroy, to devastate, and to kill my people. A crime of genocide.
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we're talking about Peabody Coal in St. Louis, and we have a couple of guests who have thought and read and studied a lot about coal in this area. We have Henry Robertson with the Great Rivers Environmental Law Center, and we have Sara Edgar with Sierra Club's Beyond Coal campaign. Now, Henry, tell me, in the first part of the show we talked about the 4 plants that Ameren has. Now, is Ameren pretty much ready to retire these plants, so there's not much cause for concern, or what?
No, they should be, but they plan to run them as long as they possibly can. Like I mentioned, Merrimack plant is 60 years old now. The usual lifetime for a coal plant is 40 years. And they're not,
so it's already,
and they're not even thinking about closing it down. They want to keep it. The one thing that might cause it to shut down is if the Environmental Protection Agency comes out with new regulations that would just be too expensive to justify, and then they have to retire them. Okay. But when you see, as Sara said, that they're adding these new coal ash landfills at Merrimack and these other plants, that shows that they intend to keep them running until they fill up with ash.
They wouldn't be asking about landfills, new landfills, unless they plan to use them for.
Right.
But environmentally, don't we want things to last for a long time? I mean, a house that lasts for 400 years is environmentally more sound than a house that you tear down every 20 years. And certainly if we have, say, like a baseball stadium, we would want it to last for centuries instead of tearing it down after 60 years. Wouldn't we want a coal plant to stay burning for a long period of time? What's the problem with that?
Well, that kind of technology is tough on the equipment, so eventually it's going to wear out. But beyond that, we have to stop burning coal.
Okay.
That's, if we're going to stop wrecking the planet's climate, then we just have to get off coal.
Okay, and so keeping these operating is basically keeping the whole issue of keeping coal burning, which is one of the worst sources of climate change, worst sources of greenhouse gases. And it's particularly bad for people who live around and breathe the dust or have their water contaminated. Now, Sara, what are some of the issues that we were talking about with water contamination? What are some of the health concerns that people would have with burning coal?
The health concerns. Well, when you talk about the problems with water and burning coal, there's actually a number of issues. So you have the issues associated with coal ash. But then you also have issues associated with mercury contamination, which actually comes from the stack. So it's initially an air pollution issue.
What does mercury have to do with coal?
Mercury comes out of the stacks when coal is burned. So it's one of the things that goes out into the air.
Is mercury in coal?
Yeah, it's something that is a result of burning coal.
Okay,
and
so you can't burn coal without having mercury go someplace.
Right.
Okay.
So the mercury comes out of the stacks into the air, and then it rains down, onto the land and onto the water. And so the mercury contamination that's, in our waterways, in our fish, over 50% of that comes from burning coal. So, when you see all of these warnings about eating fish, it's largely because of coal plants and our coal burning that's causing that concern. So that's a major issue for women of childbearing age and for the unborn. And then there's also the issues with thermal pollution.
Oh, just a second about mercury. Now, as I understand it, one of the big issues with mercury is it causes brain degeneration. It causes damage in the development of neurons.
Right.
And so, especially for a growing fetus, if the fetus is exposed to a lot of mercury, you're going to have a child which has a lower IQ, is not able to deal with problems conceptually as well, because the nerve cells in the brain just not going to develop as well as they would, as they normally should.
Exactly.
Okay. And then you were talking about another form of pollution. What is that?
And that's thermal pollution. All coal plants need a way to cool down. So that's why they're typically based on rivers, and they suck a lot of water up into the plant to cool down the whole system. And then they eject that water back into the river, but it's typically at a higher temperature level. So that causes problems for aquatic life. There's a number of endangered species that exist in our area, especially in the Missouri River, the pallid-nosed sturgeon, and so that's being put at risk. It doesn't have to be that way. They have technologies now that require no water to be brought in, or very small amounts, and they can cool off the plant without consuming large amounts of water.
Because let me see if I have it correct. There's going to be a lot of plant life in the water, and then there's going to be animal life too. And these plants and animals evolved so that they adjust to a certain temperature.
Right.
And then you increase the temperature a lot, 5, 10, 15 degrees, and those species are just not going to thrive. They might not even survive at all in that higher temperature over the water.
Exactly. We don't really know how a lot of them will fare, and especially their reproduction and whatnot. So that's an issue of great concern. A new stat actually came out recently saying that coal plants are responsible for 70% of the water contamination from industrial sources. So they are by far and large the largest source of water pollution in our communities.
Right. Okay, so is there anything else that you wanted to cover, Henry or Sarah, about the issues with coal before we get into what some of the alternatives to burning coal are?
Well, yeah, I'd just like to say very briefly a few things about some of the specific coal plants. So, we talked a little bit about the Merrimack coal plant being one of the oldest coal plants in our region, and that plant has actually been attributed with 57 premature deaths a year and 1,000 asthma attacks. So it's a huge burden on these communities, especially for children or the elderly or people who already have health conditions, putting them at greater risk because of the air pollution. So things like sulfur dioxide that are coming out of the stacks. And there's, out of Ameren's coal plants, only one of them has modern pollution controls on it to reduce what we're all breathing in.
So they're dangerous in and of themselves, but they're even more dangerous because they don't have any sort of minimal pollution control.
Exactly, yeah. And the Hlavaty coal plant, which is the largest one in our state, is actually responsible, in 2011, was responsible for 290 premature deaths.
Wow, that is amazing.
Right. It's considered the number1 killer of all coal plants in the country. And it's number 4 for greenhouse gas emissions of all coal plants or all point sources in the country.
And number 1 for mercury, is that right?
I think now it's down to number 7. Last year it was number 1, now it's number 7.
Okay, Henry, we have less than a minute left. What are some of the alternatives that you think that we could have instead of burning coal?
Oh, it's what you could see them sprouting out every place else in the country practically. You have wind power and you have solar power. And you also have, as we said, there are efficiency programs to reduce the demand for electricity in the first place. That's where I think you start. If people can save energy, they'll be saving money.
But if something's cheaper, won't you want more of it?
Well, coal is not cheap. If that's, I mean,
but I mean, if your price of energy goes from 50 cents per unit. Okay, I tell you what, we're getting the wrap-up sign. We'll have to deal with that in another show. I want to thank Henry Robertson. I want to thank Sara Edgar. I want to thank our audience, and I want to urge everybody to tune into Green Time the same time next week.